Welcome, Executive Hustle listeners. If you are a regular listener to the show, you will recognize this revisited episode with Justin Leader, CEO and founder of BenefitsDNA. We are bringing this episode back from the archives as our 1 year anniversary approaches at the end of this month, June of 2025. So excited to just resurrect this awesome inaugural episode of the Executive Hustle. Justin is an amazing leader and father and advocate pioneer in the benefits industry, changing a industry that requires so much renovation and innovation. This is a personal and professional story of resiliency, and I know you will get a lot out of it. It is great to see where we have come this entire year of the Executive Hustle. So many great stories and lessons learned, both from successes and failures. While we take July off, it's an opportunity to just take a sample back, a journey back through the different episodes that we've had and revisit, your favorite ones and the lessons that we've all been able to learn. And remember that through community, we all rise and the best leaders lead in community with others. So with that, a revisit of Justin's episode from June of 2024. Congratulations to his success and 1 year of the Executive Hustle.
Welcome, Justin, founder and CEO of BenefitsDNA. I am so glad to have you on the podcast with me today. I have been looking forward to speaking with you for quite some time. As you know, I'm a clinician by training and an executive coach in practice. And one of the things that I do or have a tendency to do is really to help leaders learn, live, and lead with more ease. I'm really interested in lessening pain for themselves and for those around them. And sometimes that comes in the form of helping people identify blind spots or helping them see something from a different and new perspective. This podcast has 3 values that really underpins why I talk to people and what we talk about: curiosity, vulnerability, and ownership. And I'm so excited to have you, Justin, on because you not only are a curious and vulnerable leader, but right now you are hot, hot, hot. And I don't just mean your haircut, but in everything that has to do with healthcare and helping leaders take more ownership as fiduciaries for their employees' health and welfare. So
well, Kirsten, Yurich, I am honored to be here. I am a big fan of everything that you do and who you are. So I am excited to jump in and spend some time with you and your listeners.
Well, thank you so much. Tell me, did the 7-year-old Justin want to be a benefits advocate?
The 7-year-old Justin was just trying to survive. It's interesting. I think back to that time every once in a while, and I came from a broken home. I was adopted by my grandfather, my great grandmother. I lived with them from the age of 2 till about 6. I spent my 6th year of life with my biological mother and her second husband, and then quickly went back to living with my grandfather at 7 years old. So thinking back to that vulnerable time of my life, I didn't know what the heck I wanted to be when I grew up. I just knew that I wanted to feel safe and loved and wanted. And it didn't dawn on me till years later exactly what my purpose was. So thanks. You just opened up a whole can of worms on that one, Kirsten.
Well, I think one of the things we take from that is we live in chapters, right? It's not the whole book.
Amen.
Tell me your current chapter. Where are you headed?
Well, man, I wish that I had a crystal ball and I knew, but I know that much like climbing Mount Everest, when you're low on oxygen, I just put one foot in front of the other and then in front of the other, and maybe I slide back a little bit and then in front of the other. But it's a whirlwind. It's right now I'm living in the balance of my professional persona as well as my personal persona. So running a business and putting the interest of my clients and my staff and in the front from a priority perspective. And then on the flip side, ensuring that my two boys and my wife are protected and taken care of. And I'm able to provide them with a life experience that I always wanted as a kid. So this chapter, I think, would be called Chaos, but in a good way.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I think so many people can relate to that. How, how have how has having kids changed you as a leader?
You know, I had the head of procurement for a large energy company when we were pregnant with our first, Cullen, who will be 5 here soon. Say to me, as I was getting excited and nervous and all those feelings leading up to the birth of him, Justin, having a kid is like missing someone your whole life and not realizing it till the day they're born.
Mm,
And my gosh, was she right? It definitely changes your perspective. I laugh now, as other fathers did to me, when I hear about the drive home from the hospital and how nervous you are and what the heck am I even doing? I'm responsible for this other living being.
right.
But, you know, I equate kind of running a business, at least the way that I do, in a similar vein as being a father. I mean, I care about my team and my people, and I try to handle them with as much care. As far as being a father, I feel all sorts of levels of fulfillment that I've never experienced before, but at the same time, extreme levels of frustration, not knowing what the heck I'm doing, which in some ways we could equate to running a business at
Oh,
times.
right.
But I love it, and every day is a new experience. And like last night, where I went from 12 till 3:30 in the morning with my 2-year-old who wouldn't sleep for whatever God, decided to do so that he wouldn't sleep. You just kind of roll with the punches.
Hmm. And how doesn't that help us in leadership, right?
You have to. You have to be resilient
I
in
ran a
life and in business.
Yeah, yeah. So I ran quick story. I ran a school for a long time, and for a long time, I didn't have kids, and parents would ask me, "Do you have kids? Do you have kids?" When I was dealing with, challenging situations, and would be offended by that question for the longest time until I had kids. And then it all of a sudden made sense, right? Well, you said the perspective changes, and boy, does it. And I think you can't really explain that to people until they walk through
You
those.
know, I as a man, I've never enjoyed getting kicked in the groin. I never will. It's not something that I gravitate towards. But I never thought I could love a being as much as I do that will inadvertently kick me in the groin. And then 5 minutes later, I still love the kid.
Sure.
It's been a wonderful experience. But yeah, if anything, it gives you a little bit of a thick skin as you go out there, and also provides a level of empathy and understanding, and a sense of community that otherwise I wouldn't have had. Right. And it doesn't have to be like your biological child either. You live that through life experiences with nieces and nephews, or maybe you adopt a child or come from a blended family. Anyway.
Yeah, I love what you said, how you can separate what he does and who he is. And those are two different things. And boy, we have to do that at work all the time. Our employees will do things, and we just kind of have to deep breathe a little bit. And we still want them as an employee, but boy, maybe they're not where we need them to be. And what do we have to do as a leader?
I am very blessed. I'm not without sin. I know that we have issues within BenefitsDNA that pop up. Every company has, issues. I think where my frustration comes in is my ability to handle issues with vendors and my lack of patience, considering the industry I work in. It's very frustrating, as we've talked time and time again. But yeah, I would say that being a parent has made me a better man in many ways.
Yeah. What would you say is the most undervalued skill every leader should focus on?
I got to tell you, listening. I think listening, but actually hearing what people are telling you is your superpower. I've had a lot of people give me certain compliments over the years, and I always felt awkward in taking them. And I'm like, oh no, there's better people out there, and there's better speakers. There are people that are more passionate. more creative, blah, blah, blah. But once you start listening and believing what these people tell you, man, you take that skill set, whatever it may be, elevate it, and then fill the gaps of where you are weak with people that are really good at the other stuff. And it's like a 1 + 1 = 10 equation. So that would be my advice. Clean your ears and listen to what people are telling you.
There's a reason we have 2 ears, right?
Yeah, somebody told me that once. I wasn't really listening.
Well, we often also learn from our failures. As you know, I've shared many of mine with you. What would you say is your greatest mistake as a leader?
You know what? I think at this point, my biggest mistake thus far has not been filling in those gaps a lot earlier than I needed to, and thinking that I had to do so many things on my own. Maybe there's some limiting factor. Maybe it's revenue and the ability to hire people, but we live in a day and age where there's so many resources, fractional people that you can bring on, right, to help elevate the work that you're doing. And for me, if I had any regret, it's not doing things sooner. And I know that we all are on a path and things happen for a quote unquote reason and on their own timeline. But there's also some personal accountability in that too. We all have free will. It's a great gift from the universe. I wish I would have taken action a little bit sooner and getting the right people on board and really taking a chance on myself.
What do you think is that holds people back? Or what is it that held you back?
Fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable in my bubble. Do I have enough money? What if this bankrupts my family? It's I don't know. There's a lot of different things that it could be that's holding somebody back. But I look at it this way. I'd rather look back on my last days and say, hey, at least I gave it a try than not do it at all. I mean, I was raised by senior citizens, my grandfather and his mom, my great grandmother. I went to a lot of funerals as a kid. Right. More so than birthdays. So you get a lot of people that were like, man, I wish I was young like you, or I wish I had your energy, How do you think
that shaped you? That's a very unique experience.
It's perspective. It's for darn sure. I'm very familiar with a lot of shows that probably most people aren't, like Dallas and, Golden Girls and, classic Gilligan Island and all that.
Donahue.
Man, Donahue was great. Matlock. Woo.
Matlock.
Yeah. So, no, it taught me appreciation though. Right. It was tough for me going through school and like 2 parents would show up for school events and maybe my grandfather was off work or wasn't, or my great grandmother just didn't have the health to come and visit. So there's a lot of things that I longed for that I wanted. Yeah. But I also had a lot of examples growing up of things that I didn't want to be like. And Renee Rodriguez talks about it. You got lighthouses, people that attract you, that you want to emulate and be like, and then foghorns that you avoid. Yeah. So for me, it wasn't an easy path by any means, but it helped shape who I am today. And I tell you, I'm extremely resilient because of it. But that doesn't mean that I'm not vulnerable or there aren't times where I get wrapped up in my own issues with self-belief or I'm overly critical of myself, right? That stems from that abandonment. But I learned a heck of a lot from these senior folks, mainly how to talk and listen, because if you've ever hung out with senior citizens, they tend to tell you the same thing over and over and over and over again.
I have some famous stories from my grandparents that I feel obligated to tell my children because they're not here to tell them themselves. And I heard them so many times. I just feel obligated. And they're still alive for me, these people that aren't here, for my children. I don't know if you feel the same.
I absolutely do. It's also the number one way for me to irritate the heck out of my wife when I tell her the same story for the 15th time in a row.
Because she's heard them.
Yeah, but you're right. It keeps their memory alive. And now I I think back, and my grandfather said one thing. He said, just make me proud. So, from time to time, we got to hit pause and say, am I making them proud? Am I making myself proud?
Mm. What a question. How would you answer that today?
Regardless of the self-doubt and my affinity for self-deprecating humor and everything under the sun, yeah, I would say my 7-year-old self would probably be pretty damn proud of where I'm at. I think that I broke through a lot of the odds, and I took care of my grandfather the last 3 years of his life. He died in 2014. My great grandmother died in 98. I'd like to think that I'm making them proud wherever the heck they're at.
Yeah.
But now the focus is more on, am I being the man that my wife is proud of? Am I being the man that my kids, my boys, want to be like someday?
Right.
That to me means everything.
Your first vocation is your family, is what I hear. Yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm. And that shaped you as a leader.
It's also part of what I think about when whatever legacy is meant to be is does it live on in them, that sense of moral and ethical obligations towards fellow man or woman? And ultimately, am I living the life that, benefits those around me, my friends, my community? Those are the most valuable things that I think any one of us can have. And you can't overlook that, especially when building a business.
Yeah, it's one of my core tenets here with Executive Hustle is that community is part of our success, right? We have to lean on it, we have to listen to it, and we have to speak out into it. How would you say community has helped you the most in the last, I don't know, 6 to 12 months? Let's stay recent.
Tell you this much, there is no self-made person.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of folks help you, for better or for worse along the way to get to whatever that destination is that you're heading towards. But we've talked about this before in Vistage and other areas regarding common sense indicators.
Mm.
And I feel like the impact is being heard, the message is being heard, both in our mission, but also in the way that message is coming back to us. And what do I mean by that? We show up at a conference and we have people waiting at our booth to have a discussion.
Yeah.
We have people from the community who feel comfortable reaching out, even if they're not a client, to say, how would you approach this situation? I respect your advice, your team's advice. And then we have folks that have reached out that want to come work with us and be a part of something bigger than themselves. And to me, that is a good indicator that we're doing the right thing. And it's never been about the money. The money comes, we could all make a lot more money, but I'd rather strive for that emotion, that impact, that feeling that I can lay my head down at night and know that I did right by somebody. In some instances, that people that could never help me or us or my family, but by all means, we have a purpose here.
Right.
I'm still trying to figure out exactly what mine is, but this feels like a part of it is who can I help? Because Lord knows, as you asked my wife, I need all the help I can get.
Well, thankfully, she's not on today. Maybe on a future episode, we'll have her on.
She should be. Yeah.
Yeah. But it strikes me, as you're talking, you're leading at home, right? And of course, your wife is too, equally. But you're leading at home, you're leading in your business, and you're leading in an industry here that really is challenged and ripe for revolution.
Mm.
How does that resonate for you? Is that where you saw yourself? Where are you going to take that?
I hate the word no, and it's part of the punk rock in me, but let me tell you the backstory that I haven't shared with many people. I remember being in middle school and I had it was my grandfather's half brother's wife was sitting in our kitchen talking to my great grandmother. And I overheard her say, Justin will be lucky to graduate high school if he doesn't end up in jail or addicted to drugs or some crap.
Wow.
And I overheard that, and man, did it hurt? It hurt. And I don't know these people. Like, I saw them once every couple of years they showed up, but for somebody to have the audacity to say that,
yep,
kind of lit a fire to my rear end. And listen, I'm not perfect. I've made a handful of mistakes in my life, and I'm accountable for every one of them. But I wanted to prove her wrong. And I've joined a couple industries now where I just saw some blatant consumer protections violations, things that ethically I didn't think were right. And for me, man, when I die, I want to go out as the underdog that never lost hope.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hope for a better tomorrow and a better future for everybody. And if I can do it, other people can. And I'm not saying that my, childhood was any worse than anybody else's. Lots of people have loss and experience.
Right.
You have a right to feel that no matter on what level. But for me, I wanted to buck the system. And I saw no greater opportunity than that in healthcare, and specifically what employers go through with this huge expense that they have and how their bottom lines are suffering. And in turn, the bottom lines of the American people are suffering, and how patients' rights were just taken advantage of. And I found some like-minded people and just fed into that.
Yeah.
And before I know it, like I am talking some policy stuff in DC and I'm helping my clients. So it becomes this two-pronged mission. And then other people see that and they're like, I want a part of that, because the majority of my industry is interested in one thing and one thing only: money.
And
Money.
What you're doing is contagious. I mean, people are coming on, they want to talk to you, they want to talk about it, they want to know how to do better for their employees, right? Leaders don't want to waste their money, and they don't want to have their people cheated, and they don't want to be cheated. And you are finding a way and showing people a way to do that. And that's contagious. That's passionate.
But we're fighting $1 trillion behemoth. We spend $4.5 trillion every year in this country. We're ranked in the mid-30s of developed nations in outcomes. I have a massive target in my back with the status quo that exists, whether it's your traditional broker or a lot of these healthcare behemoths that thrive on opacity and misaligned incentives. And I've gone up to bat against some big billion-dollar organizations, and they've tried to make me, hurt, and my clients hurt. But, I think the mission is strong. I mean, we trademarked, we fix your healthcare. We believe that. And I believe that. And even if it's for one individual that we're able to help, great. Like we've made that impact there. And that helps me sleep a lot better at night.
Yeah. It absolutely has to. And the fire that you have from your past, that middle school story, that's fueling what you're doing. And that's so clear. Every person that interacts with you, the summit you just had, very successful. These are all indications. I don't think it matters the size of the enemy, David and Goliath, right? It doesn't matter. I think what matters is your passion and that you're on the side of the angels.
You're the second person to say that in the past week. The other one was
really
Cynthia Fisher, who's the head of patient rights advocate. She said, we're on the side of angels here. But, part of it, I think, is too, you say all these things, and I struggle to this day in accepting the compliment or the praise or the recognition. And I think it's two things. It's one, mentally I struggle with that feeling of worth, right? And abandonment and all that. That's just part of who I am and my makeup. And I think other people experience that too.
That's common. Very common.
Very much.
I haven't met a leader who can take a compliment, right? We've actually practiced it in our meetings, right?
It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the one gentleman. He actually spoke up and he said, Justin, when somebody offers you a compliment, say, thank you. I've worked really hard on that.
Right. Yeah.
So hard.
There's our tagline for today. Leaders, when you're given a compliment, say thank you.
Say thank you. Yeah. The other thing is I see this mountain and you get to one peak and it's almost like a false peak. There's like 3 more behind it. Right. So like how far can we go and push to incorporate change? There's a big bill coming up, the Braun-Sanders bill at the Senate. Like how can I empower people to speak about this and want to take action and go testify in front of Congress and say how screwed up the system is? Like I want to have those conversations more and more with my clients, but also with people that aren't within my circle that have power and influence more so than they realize. So,
well, and I think what's interesting about that is You said a peak and then a next peak and then a next peak. So, this is that infinite game that Simon Sinek talks about, right? You're not just trying to get from A to B. That B is off in the distance and the goalpost keeps moving. And so how do you stay motivated as a leader? How do you continue to motivate your team? These are questions that are not just you struggling with, but many leaders are struggling with that question.
It's so much caffeine and heavy metal and hardcore rap that just keeps.
So it's individual, right? Individual strategies that we deal with.
Hey, Eminem's in his 50s now and still dropping magics. Like, if he can do it, I can do it, right?
Excellent. So find your inspiration. Everyone is a little different here. Justin, this was as close to magic as I'm going to get today. And so I just really want to thank you. I appreciate your time. And I want to highlight a couple things that stuck out for me and hopefully for our listeners as well that are just part of this amazing conversation. One, you shared that true listening is effective leadership. And I second that for sure, that true listening comes from leadership, and that we want to be listening to what people are truly saying, what's behind those words. Right?
Agreed.
I really appreciate that you shared that. Second, your past experiences. Thank you for being so vulnerable, so raw, so open, and sharing where your resilience comes from, right? So that you can continue to take that peak and that next peak and that next peak, right? Where does that come from? So our past experience builds that resiliency. The resiliency comes from the past so that we can make the choices in the future. And don't wait to fill in the gaps. Heard that pretty loud and clear, right? Go faster by filling in those gaps sooner. Excellent lessons for our leaders that are listening. I think all of these things will help our listeners lead well and live well and learn well. And so I really want to thank you for your time today. And if people want to follow up with you or learn more about you, how can they do that?
It's easy. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can go to wefixyourhealthcare.com, BenefitsDNA.com, or leadersneverquit.com.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, this was great, Justin. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kirsten.
Thank you for joining me today for another great Hustle Conversation with the Central PA Executive. You can find out more about my guest in the show notes. And if you liked the episode or have something to add to our conversation, please find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Subscribe, rate, and review. Remember, leadership is best practiced in community. You know a leader who needs to hear something from this episode, so pay it forward and send it to them today. Don't wait. Until next time, the best leaders not only lead well, they live well and learn well. Bye now.